Hi, this is Tariqul Islam. Today I am going to talk on security configuration. On my first page, I have my door keys and RSA token on top of my computer. I took this picture and there is a reason why I have this picture. In real life, if we don't use the right key or the right program key for our cars or our house doors, we cannot open and get inside, or we cannot leave our home, or we cannot drive our car. So this is very important to have the right keys in your real life. In your virtual life or in your IT world, it is also very important to know the right security codes and to know your password ID and have your system configured correctly. Otherwise, our system can be at great risk. On this page, I defined what is misconfiguration. We have to have a very solid understanding on misconfiguration. And for misconfiguration, we need to know what are the right configurations. Once we know the right configuration, it is very easy to find out what are the misconfiguration. We can define misconfiguration as the wrong configuration or the mistakes of configuration. Misconfiguration is defined as configuration mistakes that can result very severe or bad application behavior that includes misuse of default passwords, default user ID, roles and privileges, and excessive debugging information disclosure. And the effects of misconfiguration can be very risky. So we need to know what are the misconfiguration. On this page, I put all the information, ranking information by OWASP. In 2010, misconfiguration was on their list, and it is back again on 2013. So I think security misconfiguration is a very risky thing. What are the impacts? We need to know how security misconfiguration, or if you do not configure our application or software or our server right, what kind of impacts we can have. Impacts can be very severe, can be partial or full data loss, or even our system can be compromised by the hackers. Our data can be modified, can be hacked, or we can lose our data completely. And moreover, the recovery can be very expensive. On this page, I have the statistics by the year and by the number. From 2010 to 2012, it shows what the effects of security misconfiguration by the numbers. Server misconfiguration, input validation, encryptions, authorization, authentication, and others. Now I'm going to talk about the causes of security misconfiguration. There's so many things that can cause security misconfiguration, and I think default option, that is number one problem that can be the reason of security misconfiguration. If we do the default installation, it comes with so many default features such as default user ID, default password, default roles, default privileges. For instance, default Oracle installation comes with the user ID Scott, and it has the user ID password. We all know that. Even a person who doesn't have that much knowledge or skills, he can use the Scott and password tagger and get into the database and can modify other users or information if Scott has the roles assigned that can get him in deep into database. So this is very important to know about the default options, and either remove the default account, expire the default password, or change the password. Another big problem with the default features, some application comes with the default port number, For instance, Oracle has the 1521 default port number, and it is an open port, so you need to pay attention on all the default options. Access debugging information. This is also another cause of configuration, wrong configuration or misconfiguration. It can reveal too much information, and attackers or hackers can collect extra information. For instance, the internal working of an application or version number, and they can have a SQL inject attack. And we all know that SQL inject attack can be very severe, can either take over the system or can modify the data. Improper policy and role. If you do not maintain the policy, company IT security policy, that can be very dangerous for the application. We need to have the right configuration and right policy and roles configured for the system and applications. IT policy plays a vital role in application security, what it can do, what it cannot do. And roles are also very important. If you don't have the right roles, or if you don't assign the right role, that can be very risky. For instance, we do not need to assign a HR role to a person who normally handles the accounting. Vice versa, HR person doesn't need to know all the financial information. So roles is very important. We don't need to assign a role to engineer who can access the database of HR database or accounting database. So having a good and solid knowledge on roles and policies can help to configure application or system correctly. Human mistakes that can be blamed for 43% of system failures. It happens everywhere. We all are human, but we make mistakes also. We can avoid those mistakes if we use our common sense and if you use the right design when you develop the application. Right designing is to blame, and also tight restrictions. Sometimes people don't like restriction. Some employees like to work around and avoid the security benchmarks. So we need to keep in mind when you design our application, the interfaces should be easy to use, and restrictions should not be too tight. Where we need to know where this misconfiguration can happen. It can happen everywhere, every part of the application, every layers of the application. Operating system such as Windows software, our Unix software, Solaris software, operating system, or our Linux operating system. We can have security misconfiguration in our web server, application server, or even database, framework, even coding. So we have to pay attention each and every layers of our application, our system, to avoid this security misconfiguration. How that happens, this is what we are going to talk right now. Hidden manipulation can be blamed, how the hackers can hack using the misconfigured system or application. Hidden manipulation often used to save user session without the need to maintain the complex database on the server side. Hidden manipulation users do not see or modify the hidden field. When we select something from the applications, such as our price, when you shop on Amazon.com or eBay.com, or the SKU numbers, those are the parameters can be modified by the hackers and can be used to hack the information. Parameter tampering is another important issue that hackers use. They tamper the parameter and hack the system or application, and this is based on manipulation of application, basically the web-based application. In web-based application, parameter exchanged between the client-side machine and the web server application. The application server. This is a form of web-based hacking where the certain parameters in the URL or web application page can be accessed by authorized user and that hackers change without user authorization. Hackers take the advantage of hidden or fixed fields and modify the parameters. A good example would be checkbox, drop-down box, or the combo box. Cookie poisoning. This is not the cookie we eat in our real life. This is the cookie that we all know what cookies are. When you use our user ID, account numbers, that can be saved by the cookies. And hackers can use those information to get in and modify the data or take over the user account. And cookie is an act of manipulating or forging that can be used to bypass the security or to send the false information to a server. So this is very important. We all know the cookies, about the cookies, and clear our cookies once in a maybe week or monthly basis. Stealth commanding is a set of techniques that allows attackers to exploit problems in server-side scripts that change the code executed by the server. It normally or primarily used in the execution of operating system commands, allowing complete takeover of the server. So stealth command can be used to take over the whole server. Forced browsing, we can tell by the name. This is kind of attack where the aim is to have the access to the resource that are not referenced by the application but are still accessible. Hackers can use brute force techniques to search for unlinked contents in the domain directory, such as temporary directories and files, old backups, and configuration files. In old backups and configurations, those are very important for the security. And if you lose our backups, you will lose the whole database information, sensitive data, all the information that you have in your server. Same thing can be applied on configuration files, where we have all the security configuration saved. So we need to make sure those are saved and configured our application right to avoid forced browsing. Backdoors and debug options. These are very highly risky business, and hackers love backdoors and they love debugging options to leave open for them. As you said, debugging options helps developers to find out the problems. But as we go forward to the production, we need to lock our backdoors and we need to deactivate the debug options. In debug options, application contain code that left for debugging purpose, and some even contain code left by the employees that can take the advantages. Debug options comprise entry points that allows hackers to access the application. So we need to either deactivate the debug options or close the backdoors. Am I at risk? This is a very important question, and we all need to find out whether we are at risk or not. How do we figure out? We can use this software patching, security patching, or quarterly or monthly patching. That helps a lot to keep the application or software safe and secure. We need to find out what are the features that we don't need to use, or what are the features we need to deactivate. And there are default accounts that comes with this software, default password. We need to find out them and deactivate or lock them. Also, there are some security settings that is not necessarily important for the software, that can be that can be used by the hackers to hack our system. We need to pay attention on these things. Now I'm going to talk about solution. How do we can avoid those problems? There are some basic policies that we can use, like we should not use the default credentials, default password, default user ID, default port number, or even default naming convention. And we need to avoid default installation if we can. We need to maintain the consistency of configuration between versions. If we change the version, we need to make sure we are applying the same benchmark on all the versions. Also, we need to restrict or avoid default configuration options, choose default password, and the roles and privileges. Also, scan the system monthly basis or quarterly basis, and also have the audits done by the third party, or if not, someone within this company to have the audits done. And also, strong encryption can help to avoid hackers and misconfiguration. And also, I am going to talk about some solution how we can secure our system and avoid the misconfiguration. Secure coding and code review are two most important things. This is how we can avoid misconfiguration. Always have a practice of secure coding or practice defensive coding. Review your code. It is a good practice to have a third-party reviewer to review the code, so that that person can find out what are the problems, what are the issues, what we are not doing right, and then we can follow up and configure or code our system with safety and security. Secure configuration and testing. This is most important to have the application secured. We need to know what are the right configurations, what are the wrong configurations. There are some benchmarks we can follow and we can implement to have our system configured right. Also, we need to test our configuration. Once you are done with the configuration, we need to test them, maybe quarterly, if not quarterly, maybe twice a year. This is how we can find out all the security loopholes, security problems, and misconfigured system or application, and fix them. Patching and education. Security patching is very important to keep our systems secured, good configuration, and avoid hacking problem. All vendors have alert. We can set up weekly, monthly, or quarterly alert. This is how we can keep ourselves up to date and keep our system patched. Also, we need to educate ourselves. What is wrong? What is right? What we should do and what we should not do when it comes to configure our system. In summary page, I think we all know that in our modern life we use application, web-based application at work, at home, in school, anywhere you go. We have risks and IT risks. It doesn't mean that we need to avoid all the web application. We can use them, but we need to know what are the risks and how we can avoid them. We need to find out what are the priorities, like safeguarding our web application, and we need to avoid security misconfiguration. We need to follow or practice best IT practices, benchmarks, and use our common sense. Then we'll be able to use our application without problems or issues. In this page, I have 3 follow-up questions. If you have time, please shed some light on these questions. On last pages I have all the references. Then I did some research online, and I have read some resources. Hopefully you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you very much for your time.